Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Village of Bartlett Committee of the Whole meeting for September 18, 2018. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Kammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro, absent. DEYNE?
Here.
GABRENYA?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
Ranke?
Here.
President Wallace.
Here. First meeting on our committee of the whole, our first item on our committee of the whole agenda this evening is under Community and Economic Development. Chairman GABRENYA.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place in my thing here. The first item is in regard to Indian Express and the BEDA application. I will actually defer to, is Tony here? Oh, there, sorry. I will defer to Tony for explanation. And we've already visited this topic once, but we have more information as I understand it. Yes?
That's accurate.
And before Tony speaks, I kind of just wanted to make a few comments about this program and about the requester that we have this evening. Given the fact that it's the first one, I think it's important the board understands what we went through on this petition from a staff perspective, how we got here, and how we plan on finishing up. AJ, who is here this evening, not unlike a lot of business owners that we work with, that we have spent a lot of time with. He first visited us in 2017 and met with Tony. During that time, we had been letting all the business owners know that there was a possibility of this program. We wanted to keep momentum going, keep people excited about their business opportunities, given the program that the village has discussed. And when the board did approve the program, AJ was one of the many people that we told that the board approved it, the money is available, you need to fill out the paperwork. AJ was the first individual to fill out the paperwork. That's why he's here before you this evening. And I think you should know the methodology that Tony, myself, Paula, and some of the other staff uses on how we got here and why the dollar amount is what it is and what the request entails. The first thing is obviously the concept. The concept is a quick food service Indian restaurant. It didn't take us very long to go through our business inventory and see that we have 0 Indian restaurants. And I think that's a fantastic share of the market. I think that really excites us. In addition to that, I think it's important to note that he's also the owner of the building. We spent a lot of staff time playing counselor to tenants and owners, so that really cuts through that. The fact that he's a resident and he owns the building. Third thing that we looked at that was a primary portion of this application was its location. Its location is in Westgate Commons. During the day, that's probably one of the most successful complexes in Bartlett with daytime traffic. It's also has 2 other very busy restaurants, so it gives the requester an opportunity to have a lot of face time with residents as well as corporate Bartlett. Another important factor that we really liked about this application is that the demographic that he's going after has increased every single year since 2000. And it's also bookended on 59 by 2 of the largest regional religious institutions that is also a part of his key demographic and part of the core of his clientele. And I think it's important for the board to know that whatever happens this evening, that the process will continue after that. What the petitioner will have to do is build out a full commercial kitchen to code, and I know Brian and his staff will be all over that. And if the the requester of the grant is rewarded money, the process that we will go through to ensure that that money is being taken care of will be quite comprehensive. One, we will work with AJ to get involved with the Chamber of Commerce. 2, we will talk to our friends at BAPS and the Jain Society and let them know about his new offerings. 3, I think I was actually speaking to Paul Peterson at Bartlett Hills, and we have about 8 to 10 Indian parties. So what I would do is introduce AJ to their staff and make sure that he becomes a premier caterer for those events. We'll also do the same thing at Villa Olivia, in the Oak Center, and possibly outside of that region. We will do Bartlett Business Spotlights on Facebook. And I think those are all pros, but I think it's also important to look at the risk. And some of the risk that's involved is that it's a new concept to Bartlett. But I think when you look at where he's going and the fact that he owns the building, I think is important to note. Because one of the calls that we receive most to Tony's desk, that we receive probably weekly, is, do you have a turnkey ready restaurant? Do you have a commercial kitchen available? Right now, we have 0. So I think it's important to look on the back end that it's possible that if 10 or 15 years down the road, AJ's business doesn't work out, that the taxpayers will have the opportunity to get a second bite at the apple. We will be able to pick up the phone and say, yes, we have a commercial kitchen. Not only do we have one that's turnkey ready, but we have one in Westgate Commons, which I think would be a big asset and helps mitigate some of your risk. I just wanted to kind of outline those factors and talk to you about our methodology as to how we landed here today. And Tony's going to go over some of the facts of the business, and AJ is also here to discuss some of that as well.
Right, thank you, Scott. Some of the facts in terms of his application, you all know which unit we're talking about, 772 West Bartlett Road in Westgate Commons, located between Athletico and a dental office in Westgate Commons. One of the things that's changed as we've worked together with AJ is just kind of flushing out some of the contracts that he's been pursuing. So I did want to mention that his project cost has increased slightly by about $4,000 since the last time you saw him here a month ago. So the total project cost is about $123,000. As you recall, at the 21st committee meeting, some committee members had asked for him to provide some sort of business plan in some greater details in terms of what it is that he plans on doing over there before launching his first business. And that business plan that he produced, along with his proposed menu, is in the committee packet tonight. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I did pull out some highlights from it, including some of his own personal background as a recent college graduate, 14-year village resident, and 7 years of experience working in restaurants as a host, bartender, and server. As Scott just mentioned, this would be the first pure Indian restaurant opening in the village. The Tantuaya family are village residents and only live approximately 1 mile away. So if there's issues or problems, they'll be right there. It's not like somebody coming from another town or out from the city to manage this business. They're really right down the road. The food will be Punjabi dishes. I'm going to try to say this, Gujarati and South Indian dishes. The business plan stated that he's going to focus on catering as well as the quick serve, the carry out, and the patrons who will be seated at the restaurant. We provided some demographics that the village recently bought into a program where we can obtain demographics reports to help businesses, provided those to the petitioner, and he cited the the growth of the Indian community in Bartlett to about 15% and projected to continue to grow. As Scott mentioned, Westgate Commons is a very bustling, vibrant center and a good location to attract people who are going to other businesses. He will be spending approximately $123,000 on the build-out. This is a former salon that he is converting into a full-service restaurant. His first year of sales tax projections he put down is $200,000. However, he expects this number to increase in future years. And his goal, as I've worked with him, and we've all worked with him through the months, is to be open by Diwali in early November is the goal that he stated that he's reaching for. And of course, he's here tonight to answer any further questions you might have about his business plan or his experience.
Thanks, Scott and Tony. So I just want to turn it over for any questions that you guys have for me at this time. Already gonna-
November is pretty ambitious. Have you already started?
Oh, yeah. So,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, so right now so the framing's up, the plumbing's done, for the electrician will be done this week. We'll go through inspection this week of that. So my hood order was placed today, so that's gonna be in 10 days, that'll be coming in. And then after all that's done, then it's gonna move out really quickly and smoothly then after that. And then my drywall is going in, my floor is gonna be done, and then we're gonna move fast after that. So right now in timeline, I am projecting what I'm at right now at the moment. I'm not that far in behind with things right now. And my sign has been placed too, so it's going through the building department right now to go through the permit process right now at the moment as well.
You will be having sit-down tables in the restaurant as well?
Yes.
And how many tables do you project that you're?
I'm putting in 5 tables, and it's going to have 4 seatings, so about 20.
20 people?
Yeah,
Okay.
Lunch and dinner service?
yep, lunch and dinner. I'm going to open up at 11, and thinking about closing by 8 or like 8:30.
How many, will you be there full-time, or do you have another job in addition?
No, so
You'll
this
be
will make
managing, this will be your full-time management?
Yep.
And how many employees total will you have? Start with?
I'm thinking 5, but that's the goal. I'm thinking about 5
Okay.
right now at the moment. We'll see if I need to go up or if I need to go down between that number, but I'm thinking to stay at 5. For the front house and for the back house and for cleaning stuff, I'm thinking at 5 right now at the moment.
Okay.
Do you anticipate applying for a liquor license?
I am anticipating for BYOB, if that's gonna, so like I'm thinking about applying for that license. If that's still part of the liquor license or if that's different, I'm not sure.
That's getting real popular in the city. I have no questions. I think this is what we had asked you to come back with, and I'm very impressed. Well done.
Thank you.
Have you already filled out your chamber application?
Not yet. Not yet.
No, I would definitely recommend those of us that have businesses and that are on the board, it really is an incredible asset to be part of the chamber and to get your name out there. And Scott, thank you so much for all of the explanation, both of you. I think that given that this is our first application and our first time through the process, as it is yours, thank you for sharing your mindset and your concept and how you actually took us through the process. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I'd say we recommend it hit the board for approval next meeting.
Agreed.
Very well done.
Thank you for being here.
Mr. President, that is all for Community and Economic Development this evening.
Thank you, Chairman GABRENYA. Next item we have on our agenda this evening, under much controversy, is Finance and Golf. Chairman DEYNE.
Are we sure we have that right? It should be Chairman
Go ahead.
Carbonaro. The Village Board has requested additional time and an opportunity to review and discuss the employee group health insurance plans and cost. And this is very involved and much more than I currently can comprehend, so I'm going to ask Chanel if you could help me along here and explain to the board specifically what took place and what direction we're headed in.
Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to do that. So the village staff met several times with representatives from our broker group to discuss how we could cut costs in relation to our group health insurance. And after much discussion, we developed a recommendation for a plan for the next 1 to 3 years. So in looking at our options, we focused our efforts on plan design. And our brokers recommended that we move from our current plans to Blue Cross Blue Shield standard plans. What that means is we would lose our grandfathered status, but it also allows for an overall immediate savings of 5% across the top. So after much consideration, we felt that that was a good move to do so. Again, we would lose grandfathered status, but we actually were able to pick up the fact that we would it would be beneficial to the employees because with those standard plans, they combine the overall out-of-pocket limits to include prescription drugs and out-of-pocket costs. So it's pretty much a win-win for all of us. In addition to moving to the standard plans, we're recommending moving the HMO plan from the HMO Illinois network to HMO Blue Advantage network. That would result in a decrease in our overall premiums for HMO, and to the tune of a cost savings of approximately $84,484.51 per year.
It's an approximate number?
Actually, yeah. Well, I want to say approximate because, yes, I guess. Well, because some people could change plans, so. We also recommended, we're going to recommend offering 2 PPO plans or options. And one option would be, it would be a hybrid PPO plan, which is Blue Choice, and it would provide overall lower costs to the village and the employees. And the other option would be a Blueprint PPO. That's more of like a large network, and it's actually more closely mirrors what we currently have under our PPO option. Employees that select this plan would be required to contribute more towards the premium. So right now, the employees are contributing 15% of those costs, and we're contributing 85% of the costs. If the employees choose to stay with that option, they would be required to pay up to stay in that network, okay? And then, so our focus is to try to get more people through the hybrid option, which would be an overall cost savings to everyone. So I wanted to clarify the memo that was sent to the board. On page 2 of that memo, in the board packet, it stated that 12% of our employees would, under the PPO plan, would potentially be affected by the smaller network. However, Tracy, our benefits coordinator, noticed a discrepancy in the information that was provided by Blue Cross Blue Shield, and our broker clarified that this figure is actually closer to 20%. And then offering the 2 PPO plans would result.
No,
Yeah.
so I just want to understand that. So there's technically 20% of the folks that would most likely switch to the smaller. Am I hearing that right? Versus 12%?
No, so what I'm saying is if we moved everyone to the hybrid option and didn't allow for that the other smaller network option, or the larger network option, excuse me, 20% of our employees would be affected by that. And what I mean by that is we had Blue Cross Blue Shield run what they call a disruption report. And so, for example, if I had a doctor that I saw in the PPO network, like if I had an endocrinologist, for example, and they weren't in that large network, then it's going to cost me more money to keep that doctor and to see that doctor, but I can still choose to see that doctor. It's just going to cost me more money out of pocket. So it's going to disrupt my ability to continue to see that doctor and pay the $40 specialist copay as opposed to the higher out-of-office visit copay.
I think I understand. Go ahead.
Okay. So offering 2 PPO plans would result in a range in savings from $121,119 to $235,376, depending on what plan the employees choose to enroll in. Now, I wanted to kind of point out that the range is actually based on 85% of the most cost-effective plans. So again, it's actually closer to the higher number because we would actually offer that other network, offer the other option, but our employees would have to pay up to stay in that. So really, the savings would be closer to that higher number. By changing from the current plans with Blue Cross Blue Shield to the standard plans, we automatically change from a 3-tier structure to a 6-tier structure in the prescription drug copay plans. And prescription drug copays for our groups tend to be well above benchmarks. And so doing this is actually good for everyone across the board because it allows us for a more managed approach to cutting those costs. Also, it would in turn affect future premium rates, and then it also presents a potential savings for employees immediately because of the 6-tier structure. We also looked at another service that we could consider. It's a telemedicine component, which would allow employees to use telephone appointments as opposed to office visits for routine issues such as if someone has a sore throat, they could call in. I'm simplifying this, but there's a lot more involved in it. But it would essentially alleviate claims against our plan because this is a standalone plan, and then it would require no office visit copays, so it actually saves the employee money as well. This would be at a minimal cost to the village. It would be totally provided by the village. It's $1.75 per employee per month, but again, would create potential for overall savings based on educated consumerism. Employee education seems to be a huge issue for us, and so this year we're actually going to be involving our brokers and representatives from their group as well with we're going to be having mandatory enrollment meetings with the employees. We're going to invite spouses to come. We're going to involve our retirees. I think that they need to be educated on how to best utilize the plans that we have available, and then also be educated on, what these changes are going to mean for them. So we can we're going to have computers available to look at whether or not their doctors are in the network, and they can make choices based on that. Because some employees do want to keep their doctors. So based on current enrollments, the annual cost for village employee health insurance would be $3,166,083.
Is that our cost or is that the total premium?
That's the village
So
cost.
that's our 85%.
So
the total premium is approximately do you know that? 3,166,083 divided by 0.85, around 4 million? It's, is everybody at 8515? Janelle, is everyone 8515 or is there some?
No, I'm sorry. So no, PPO employees pay 15% and the HMO employees pay 10% of the premiums. So that's where
So the total premium is about 3.8.
yeah.
To 3.9. Okay.
Okay, so this equates to an overall cost reduction of anywhere from $205,603 to $319,860, or 6.5% to 10%. So we wanted to also address some of the future considerations, and we're going to be looking at further plan design changes relative to out-of-pocket expenses. We're going to also look at removing spouses that have coverage through their employers, evaluating a retiree carve-out plan, and then also, I know of one other community that requires new employees to enroll in their HMO plan for their first year of employment. And so I'm looking at our ability to do that as well. I'm researching that option. And I think that that's just to show employees that the HMO plan is not, HMO plans seem to have a bad rep. And I think that dates back to long ago.
You should ask my wife about that. That's what we've had for years.
Yeah, and
You can't afford PPO.
And it covers everything, and it's very cost effective. So I think that that's what their intention is. Again, I'm researching that option as well. So again, our goal was to drive down overall costs, and I think with these recommendations, I think that we're on the right track to do that. So I'm open to any questions. Obviously, Paul Miller is here from Maracas Group to answer any questions that you may have for us, or comments, concerns.
I just want to clarify, so if somebody chooses to go on the larger PPO now, what would their split be? Because it's going to shift that 15% up to a higher number. No, if they choose the larger one, they're coming out of pocket for more of the premium, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to shift the percentage split from the village to what they're paying and the village is paying.
Yes, yes, correct.
that
So
other
if they choose the hybrid plan, our intention is to remain with the 85-15 split. And then if they choose the larger network PPO plan, we're going to charge them the difference between those two premiums.
Right, so what's that percentage, do we know?
We don't know because we don't have the exact premiums of the plans yet.
It would be based on the dollars, not on a percentage. The difference would
Correct.
be based on the hard numbers, okay.
Correct, yes.
I would love to look at having the split for HMO, and if you choose anything other than an HMO, you pay the difference. So 85-15 on the HMO, and if you choose anything else other than the HMO, you're buying the extra premium for the higher policy.
I don't think we can do that with our current collective bargaining agreements, because we have, both agreements spell out that the employee pays 10% of the HMO premiums and then 15% of the cost for the PPO.
That's why we had to create the hybrid, to get around that collective bargaining.
As long as we offer one of each, I think we're good with that. And then, so reason being, then that's why we would charge more for the larger network, because that would be at a higher cost.
Yeah, that's why we have two of each. That allows us to get around that requirement.
That's the interpretation of the contract, right?
Okay.
And I think future years too, because that differential is no longer going to be $400 or $500, but it could be $1,000 on an annual basis. But that's back to, we're a pure big network with a school benefit plan, and you choose to do that. We could add even a lower cost plan with a large premium differential and peg that contribution to the lower cost plan, which is, I think, what you were
Yeah.
voicing, if we peg the 85 to.
Peg the PPO here and the HMO here. If they choose anything, the other two plans that equate to something higher, they have to pay the difference.
If we peg the contribution to the PPO rates, you'd be saving $600.
I think that that's probably closer on the lines with what general residents pay now. Actually, I pay 55%, but
But there's where, as a team, we were talking about, keywords disruption, trying to bring this to the employees on a gradual basis and get to that point maybe 2 or 3 years from now, as opposed to soccer all at once. I don't want to speak for them, but I think that was kind of their thought process.
Well, I would say that we've made two foundational changes to our health insurance program. We changed the tier structure last year, and now moving to the standard plans, I think, is a big change for us. And those are major steps in bringing some cost reduction to our plan and to building a program that's more in line with, I would say, the public sector benchmarks. At the same time, it's providing our employees some more autonomy to make their own healthcare choices. It's
Yeah.
not, here's what the plan is, here you go figure it out. This is, you decide what's best for you. You want to hang on to your oncologist because you love her? You can. You're going to pay a little bit more for it. You're going to step up. The village is going to pay this base rate for everybody. And I think that that's a very equitable way to do it, and people can make those decisions for themselves. Janelle's memo outlines a lot of the options that we talked about for consideration once we get through what I think is a major sea change. It's a big shift to transition everyone to these standard plans. There's going to be a lot of education, a lot of questions, a lot of figuring it out. And so I didn't want to layer lots of things on top of that.
Yeah.
I want to get through that, and that's why we kind of looked at it as a gradual progression.
yeah, speaking of, what's the timeline again?
What would
When do we have before?
January 1.
So we have some time here.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
but
perfect.
enrollment
Oh, but we have to open
Open enrollment
is
would be the month
November.
of December, so we should have these things printed and proposed to people by the end of November.
Okay.
And-
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, we want to make sure everybody feels confident in the switch. So I think that is our thought process and why we're doing it the way that we are.
Are the current policies, do you guys have a maximum out-of-pocket cost per employee currently?
Oh, absolutely.
What is that dollar amount?
Based on the plan, the family out-of-pocket on the current PPO with the 250 deductible is $2,500. And under the new plans, if we're in the small network, that number stays at like $3,000, and if you use the big network, it jumps to $6,000.
What are the deductibles on the PPO and the new plan?
If you use the small network, it's $500, and if you use the big network, it's $1,500.
I would say that's going to be a pretty big deterrent for people to go back to a normal PPO.
Well, the savings is commensurate with that
Yeah.
increase.
Have we looked at any HSA additional things on the side?
I did share
That's a whole
numbers,
education in itself.
and that's one of those we look maybe to present next year, because I did provide them, those savings numbers go up again with that plan. Again, I think that was a process for the next event, because, as you mentioned, it's one thing to go from these traditional plans that look a lot like the ones they have, but have components that are different with higher emergency room co-pays and drug co-pays and things of that nature, to go all the way to, the completely foreign high deductible plan for
What's
these.
the approximate monthly premium for the hybrid and then the larger group for the PPO?
We're looking at 2,700 family,
For the regular
hybrid, and
hybrid one?
2916 on the super plan.
2916.
So where there's a $200 difference in the past, the employee would be paying $30, which would be the 15%.
Yeah,
Or now, they're going to pay the total $200,
yeah.
which, is a process that I use with all my clients. We typically peg an employer contribution rate to the most cost-effective plan and, let people buy up.
Janelle, can I ask a question? Do you have an idea, I think that recruiting great talent is something that every business, both public and private, needs to be aware of. Are you able to know what other communities offer, and are we going to be competitive in recruiting talent as we need to?
Yes. So I have a list of our comparables, and I looked at what they charge in terms of percentages for premiums. Again, it's hard to compare plan to plan because their plans vary. Some communities offer different plans.
That's what I knew it was a
So
question. Thank
some
you.
of the, so some of the communities are 12%, these are employee contributions, 12%, 20%, 15%, 10%. One has a range from anywhere from 2% to 11%, 5% to 10%, 10% to 15%, 10% for single, 20% for family, and then another one has anywhere from 14 to 19%. So we're right in line with comparables where we're at right now.
Good to know, even with the change.
Well, I want to commend the staff and the broker for really making some progress here. I was skeptical that we'd ever reach the point where we'd see a real change. But as you said, this is a sea change, so thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
The telemedicine. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So are you saying that long-term, we're going to see some savings if we use the telemedicine, long-term we'll see savings because there won't be claims on our policy?
It's, as they mentioned, a win-win for everybody. I've introduced it to my clients over the last 4 or 5 years. Now, starting about 4 or 5 years ago, the AMA was quasi-opposed to this concept. But they have come around, and now all of the large carriers, for example, Blue Cross, does offer telemed services to the PPO members of our plan. But
your cost for a telemedicine visit is your office copay. So if you're on the PPO, you paid $20 anyhow. And as an example, we saw the participation report I brought up at our meeting. We've had this since December 1st, and Tracy did a great job of communicating that to everyone. But we had 9 people who actually went on the website to enroll, and no one made a phone call. And that was during the highest flu season we've had through January, February, March. But that's not unlike other sponsored plans, as opposed to the plans that we have at our office and many of our clients. It's 6 or 7, on this particular, 7 family members. They don't even have to be insured on the plan. Can call this 800 number from whatever state they're in, pay nothing. And, it's all the way from you've got an allergy, your child's got pink eye, strep throat, you can visit them with Skype, take a picture and send it to them. And if you haven't gone online or talked to them and gone through a brief medical history, because you have to do that, they'll do it right when you call. And the doctor's going to call you back, and it'll be a doctor licensed in the state you're at. So if you're at Disney World with your kids and the child gets strep throat, you don't have to go look for a doctor someplace. They call you back, take a picture of their throat, whatever it is, and you can be at the pharmacy in 45 minutes to pick up a prescription and use your medical ID card to pick up that prescription. But it costs you nothing, and there's no claim that went to Blue Cross for $182, of which you paid your $20 copay, and Blue Cross paid the $162. The other thing important, and we've had an issue with this over the years, has been overutilization of the emergency room. And typically it's Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. I don't think I can get to the doctor. And I don't want to pester around with this. My child is sick. I want this taken care of right away. I get people who raise their hands to tell me stories, and I've had them personally, where you call up and, we're not going to do, if you broke your leg, you're going to go to the emergency room. But, the strep throat, UTIs, all those kinds of things that ordinarily would cause you to call your doctor, set an appointment, leave work, or take off work to take your child to the doctor. You can do this on the phone and have the response time in less than an hour at the pharmacy. So my clients that have been using this love the heck out of it. And this particular plan that we're looking at guarantees you to save at least 25%, or you get money back. So, and they promise to get utilization up to 50% after the first year. So this is part of that sea change of making these employees, the best consumers of healthcare that we can get them to be. And if we can have someone make a telemed call instead of going to the emergency room, now we're saving $1,000, not $150. And it would apply to all members, HMO, PPO, whichever. And it would be free, no $20 or $30 copay. And a report can be submitted to your personal physician. It's not like they would try to separate these two. So we try to keep, the physician in the loop, so to speak.
Interesting. Phone a friend. I think we need a little time to digest all of this. That was a fabulous job. All my questions have been answered pretty much. So I need some time to digest it, and then maybe we'll pick another spot to come back and do one last little brush up on a committee meeting. Is everybody okay with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. President, that's all we had. Thank you, Janelle and staff, for your efforts.
Yeah, thank you. That was really well written and hit the mark on a lot of our questions. So, thank you, Chairman DEYNE. Final item on our Committee of the Whole meeting this evening is under Police and Health. Chairman Carbonaro is not with us this evening, so I will be taking over that committee for the Hanover Township Emergency Services Policy discussion, and I will turn that over to the Chief of Police. Chief Fuller.
Thanks, and good evening. On or about May 3rd, we were dealing with an autistic boy who had run away, and we had a large search effort that was going on for him to the point where we were requesting helicopters, canine teams, drones, search and rescue teams, and all-terrain vehicles to try and find him. It was in a heavily wooded area. It started getting dark and cold, and he didn't have a shirt on. He was running around, and we were concerned for his well-being, wanted to find him as soon as possible. During that time, the question came up of whether we should contact Hanover Township Emergency Services to respond and help us search for the boy. And over the years, we had used them up to about 5 years ago in 2013, and then, there were some policy changes and things, and we haven't used them since. So what I wanted to do was have a discussion here at the Committee of the Whole meeting and get some guidance on your thoughts on whether you think we should use Hanover Township. My opinion is, in looking at the Illinois Emergency Management Act and some of the ordinances and things that go along with that, is if we were to use them, I would like to limit that to emergency situations, similar to a missing person, missing child. We had those 2 serious crashes back in April within a couple hours of each other that required us to shut down both Route 59 and Lake Street, so we could use them for something like that to free up our officers to actually handle the incidents. I think we get into some sticky situations in some other instances if we were to use them for non-emergency situations, because some of the village lies within Hanover Township, some of the village lies outside of Hanover Township, and I think if it's outside of an emergency situation, it raises some questions as to jurisdictional issues, possible liability issues, and things like that. As long as it's an emergency situation, it should fall under a mutual aid request, which should cover some of those issues. So, that's kind of my thoughts on it, and I just wanted to hear what you think of it.
Thank you, Chief.
I know that they're used in other villages throughout the area, and offhand, I don't know how many villages or communities actually use their services, but I see Bill Burke is here. Bill, can you answer that for me?
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Director Burke from Hanover Township Emergency Services was willing to come and answer any questions you might have.
So it's an interesting situation because we do have currently a collaboration with many agencies outside of Hanover Township. The township has interpreted the act to mean that any municipality that is partially in a township, we will service that entire municipality, such as Bartlett, partially in Hanover Township. We wouldn't draw a line at the township boundary. Municipalities we deal with outside the township, we currently have an agreement with the Wayne Police Department, Barrington Hills, Fox River Countryside Fire District. We've executed mutual aid agreements with them. We haven't executed a mutual aid agreement with any town that's partially in a township. Outside of that immediate area, based on some of the things we do, the search and rescue was a good example. We have a certified team, several members that are trained at the search level and the search management level through the Illinois Search and Rescue Council. They've responded all over the state for searches. And those are the ones similar to what the chief was explaining, the Alzheimer patient that wanders away, a young child. We're not talking about burrowing down into buildings kind of search and rescue. So we have worked to this point with many municipalities outside of the township, if that helps.
Chief, could you ever see having an agreement with Hanover Township where they would actually help us with some of the traffic control and some of the events that we have? For example, we have 4th of July, that's the first one that comes to mind, and I'm sure there's others, but do you think there could be any collaboration of efforts with them so we could relieve some of our officers to do patrol work rather than traffic enforcement?
I think in talking with Attorney Mraz, there might be some potential issues with that. I think, because of the fact that it lies out, like the 4th of July lies outside of Hanover Township where our traffic control would be, and the fact that it's kind of outside of the boundaries of what's set forth in the Illinois Emergency Management Act. It might take an agreement or something like that. I'm not sure legalities of it, but Attorney Mraz might be able to speak to to that.
Well, I know that they've entered into mutual agreements, mutual aid agreements, is that correct?
Correct.
With other communities. So would that be something that you would entertain?
I'm of the opinion that it's clear that they have authority in emergency situations, whether they're in the township boundaries or outside of it. So if they're in the DuPage County side of Bartlett, that if they're providing emergency services, that's covered. They have clear authority. When you get into traffic control, however, that's outside of the Emergency Management Act, and they're not acting in the same capacity. Their ability to provide parking type assistance outside of the township becomes a little more questionable. And I think the chief's recommendation about using them for emergencies is a good one. That's clear cut. I think even if other towns may be doing it, I think you start getting into gray areas as to whether you look at the authority to provide those services outside of the township, it becomes questionable. So would not recommend entering an agreement for traffic control. Now, you have the example of the 4th of July, where we've got people off the streets, all our officers there doing traffic, and then they're not on the street. I think something like that, under those kind of facts, arguably could be kind of an emergency services issue in connection with something like that, or there's a way to work on a large project like that. But to be clear, I think, we're talking about emergency services, and there I don't think there's a question about their authority or any problems with respect to a mutual aid agreement or how indemnification would work in those type of settings. You get outside of that, it's a little different issue.
I think we go with the recommendation of the chief, so. All right. Thanks, Chief. And that is it thank you for being here, Mr. Burke. Thank you. That is it for the Committee of the Whole meeting. We will be adjourning directly into executive session to discuss sale of village-owned property pursuant to Section 2C6 of the Open Meetings Act. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Moved. Second.
Moved by Trustee Daney, seconded by Trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Kammer?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Gabrenya?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ranky?
We are adjourned to executive session.